Fee Jameson Folland. I am sometimes asked, in fact, quite often, what is it that causes acid reflux? You know, that when you get repetition on something that you've eaten. And it's actually more common than I would have thought it would. I've been practicing with my patients, with clients for over 25 years, and this is something that has definitely come up a lot. So a lot of it is actually caused by the anatomy, so the way that our structure is set up when it comes to our digestive system. So from when we swallow, our food passes down, ideally smoothly and just passes down easily through something called our esophagus, which joins between our throat, our mouth, and down to our stomach. And just before it goes into our stomach, it does this really sharp bend to get into our stomach. It has to come from downwards up round to the left to get into our stomach. And the challenge with that is that it also passes through a big muscle called our diaphragm. And that's the muscle that we use for breathing. Now, if we're feeling tense, oftentimes, I don't know if you've ever noticed, but I certainly have, that it's almost like I'm holding my breath to remind myself to breathe. And literally, when we're feeling tense, our diaphragm can lock down and get tight. And that can really, if you imagine, if the esophagus needs to pass through that and going into the stomach, that's actually the area that is, it forms, it's kind of like it's called a sphincter, so it's an area that can, when it gets tight, literally stop the flow. And it's ideal to actually have the ability for that to close off so that it doesn't allow food to come all the way back up. But through gravity, it tends not to. Obviously, if you're standing on your head, that doesn't help. Another one is being tense, so it tends to tense up that diaphragm. But another one, if you think about it, is how we're sitting, especially if we're eating. So when we're eating, there can be a tendency to sort of slump forwards, and that really makes it challenging for that food to get through that opening through the diaphragm into the stomach. And just generally sitting, so like we may have just had our meal, sitting slumped afterwards, maybe at a desk or not fully sitting upright, can really get in the way of the food being able to pass down easily. Foods themselves that can cause reflux include particularly spicy foods, caffeinated things like coffee, carbonated drinks, processed dry food, things like tomatoes and garlic. So watch out for those and spot the things that maybe are irritating for your system, because we're all very different, but those are classic ones that can often affect us, and obviously avoid them. And the other thing too is to think about your posture, and deep breathing is not only good for our digestion, it's good for so many other things too. So I'd love to hear which one's one of those, if this is something that's affected you or someone you know. I'd love to hear how you get on with taking those into account too.